BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all your basketball wagering needs, including pro and college hoops throughout the year. With up to the minute odds, stats, and trends, you can follow your favorite team's path to the playoffs with in game live betting, contests, and all the best player props. Experience the world's best wagering platform anytime from your desktop or mobile devices. Head to BetOnline today to become part of the team and remember to use promo code Bleav, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. Welcome to Bleav in the Cardinals, part of the Bleav Network, joined by NFL veteran and Super Bowl 33 participant of the Atlanta Falcons, Ed Smith. I am Javon Adams. Be sure to subscribe, comment, rate, and follow this podcast and tell all of your Cardinal fans to do the same. You can also watch us on the Bleav TV around the country in airports and on YouTube. Read the top Bleav stories at si.com and follow us across all our Bleav socials. So having said that, what is good, my brother?
Football is the sport that never sleeps. We're in the off season. The football, the Super Bowl is, less than a month behind us, but there's so much activity, so much stuff going on. And with the Cardinals, they've got so many things to do leading up, with the combine going on now, leading into the draft. And then we're going to get the second year, look at Austin Fort and Gannon and what they have in store for this organization moving forward. Exciting times, man.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And so we are back. We do this thing during the season. We do it twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. We'll be giving to you this Friday. We'll start hitting you once a week here, so you'll see us again next week. But today, what I want to talk about is just going over some of the needs for the Cardinals. As again, you mentioned the combine that's going on this week as we record this, and then we'll get into maybe a couple of draft positions as well, and then maybe take a little bit of a deeper dive into some of these positions next week. But the Cardinals, they finished 4-13 to the season. So again, it was Gannon's first year as head coach, and next week I think we'll tackle that the grades that the organization got as well. So maybe so don't let me forget that, Mr. Easy. But so want to get into some of the needs for the team and maybe a couple of those draft picks. So let's start it off with needs. Defensive tackle. So you can let me know if you disagree with any of these. Defensive tackle.
Go down the line.
Cornerback.
Check.
Wide receiver.
Check.
Interior offensive line.
Check.
Edge rusher.
Check.
Running back.
Check.
Now it's going to be interesting. So when especially saying wide receiver, and that's going to be one of the draft picks the possible draft picks that we talk about, because as we talk right now, the Cardinals are picking number 4 in the draft, and the interior offensive line, interesting there, but we had Humphreys that got injured towards the end of the season, and so he's on the edge of on the outside of the line. So that's going to be interesting to see what they do, whether they release him and do some of those things that because he's I think it was the ACL that he ended up tearing, if I'm not mistaken. So let's get into and then when the free agency period starts. When you're able to do the legal tampering, but when free agency starts, and there are going to be a lot of running backs that are on the market, maybe some priced out of the market for the Cardinals, and then there are going to be a lot of running backs that are available in the draft as well. But let's get into a couple of these. These possible, because we've got 3 that we'll talk about today. So the first one, we mentioned wide receiver as a need, and right now, the Cardinals are projected, because they made a statement on their X account that said that Kyler Murray is their quarterback. He is the quarterback, their franchise quarterback. So every franchise quarterback needs to have a really electric wide receiver, and that could be from Ohio State University, Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, you watch a lot of college football. Marvin Harrison Jr., by all accounts, he's that dude. But is he that dude that's going to take you to a conference championship game? Is he that dude that's going to take you first you got to win your division, right? Is he that much of an impact player? What are your thoughts on Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Well, here's the problem with whoever the Cardinals draft, and you and I have talked about this. It's not a one fixed situation, one position fixed situation. They've stripped this roster down, and it all started last year in free agency. We saw them pick up no one except for second and third tier guys, no long term contracts. And then the players we had on the roster, some guys that other organizations would have said, hey, stay here, we want you as part of our foundation. They even let those guys go. So they stripped it down to the bone. Now, and then the draft, last year's draft came, and because we were so depleted, you go get little fixes and stuff like that. But because we didn't spend any money in free agency, you're working with inferior product. So now what's happened, they started building on the culture a little bit, trying to get some of the right guys in there. Now we went through the 4-13 season, which we both predicted, right? And now they're in a situation where, okay, we started from ground floor. From all accounts, what I've heard around the league, and you've heard probably as well, the Cardinals, they at least starting the foundation right. They were even though they were getting beat, they won a couple games they weren't supposed to, they were at least competing for 4 quarters. So that's half the battle. Now you have to go get the horses that will allow you not just to compete, but start winning some of these games. Now, wide receiver is a great start, but because we don't have edge rusher, because we don't have an offensive line, because we don't have a secondary, we do have a good to sometimes, and I'm not going to call him great because I've seen greatness out of him consistently, but a good to moderately very good quarterback. But so you're building around him. Everything else, bro, you're starting from scratch. So we're going to go get that wide receiver in the draft, right? Now, first things first, let's talk about this. You and I talked about this the other day. First things first, if you're serious about it, don't be about it. Show us. Free agency is coming soon. Open up the pocketbook, and you got to start enticing some of these free agents with salary to bring them in here. Because if you're thinking we're going to lollygag in free agency and then go do this in the draft again, when you draft kids, young kids in this league, they're just that. Your first round guy, second round guy, you're probably going to get a great athlete, maybe potentially starting it. But your third and fourth and fifth and sixth, these are guys that are going to take time. By their third year, they're maturing. You get some, but if
you might not be able to watch those guys mature. As the head coach, you might not be able to see them mature.
Yes. So before you do anything, free agency, go out there and spend some money. Then with the draft, you go out and you get a Marvin Harrison Jr. That's a great pick for building on top of what you did with free agency. But if you think you're just going to do this all through the draft, like if we watch the Cardinals and nobody's signing here, nobody's coming here, it's going to be another long season because you're not building through the draft. You can build through the draft, but that takes so long, Jay. You got to build through free agency, experienced players, maturity, and you got to hit on some of those. So, I mean, we're obviously specifically talking about the draft, when that window comes for free agency and we start seeing those contracts signed at 12:01 and stuff like that, you and I will have a lot to talk about because we'll be seeing what the Cardinals are doing. But as far as the draft, yes, you got to, you can't miss. How many times, Jay, over the last 5 years before Austin Ford and them got here, did we miss on you can't miss on a first round pick. That's got to be, that's like no brainer, especially when you're picking at the top of the draft like this. 2 years ago, they trade their number 1 pick for a wide receiver that is probably a 2 or 3 on most teams.
Yeah.
And then with your second, I mean, it's just they did stuff that wasn't logical this year, and they did a good job last year. What the first pick they did last year? Wow, lineman, right? We talked about that for years. So this is year 2. Go get that number 1 receiver that will be another piece of the puzzle that you're putting together. But we got to start with free agency. The draft, like I said, is the supplemental part. You and I, interesting enough, I'll set up after this. You and I both agree, I think, that it's all done. The NFL, the one thing I think they do wrong, they hustle backwards. It should be draft, then free agency. They should push the draft up a little bit because the college season's been over for how long? Okay, let's
Yep.
push the combine a little, get them right after. Most of the college players aren't even playing in the bowls now because they start
Yeah.
preparing for push the combine up. Let's get the draft earlier. Then teams will be like, okay, we went out and drafted this, this, and this. Now it's time to go hunting for free agency. I think they do it
Yeah.
backwards in that manner. I
I
think
agree with
you
that.
agree with me too.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So if they do draft Harrison, uh, he can catch those contested balls, speed off the release, great work ethic, and so this is just one of the profiles that I was looking at. So Harrison, another possibility, and it maybe not this high, but maybe going after an offensive tackle in the draft. Jordan Morgan from University of Arizona. And they have Paris Johnson Jr. And so this particular profile that I'm reading here, and I'll quote, says, despite Paris Johnson Jr. having a solid rookie season, the Cardinals find themselves in need of a tackle again. And we mentioned that DJ Humphries, that because of the injury to DJ Humphries. So with a relative lack of depth on the O line. And I know you say address those lines in the trenches. So do you think that they should maybe go after an offensive lineman in the draft as well? Maybe not at the number 4 pick, but if they can get something there for him. So with that possibility.
Yeah, I think the strategy is, and it's almost like you're playing a game here. You look at, you have your draft board, you look at the positions, each of them, and you say this is a high octane offensive lineman draft. So you got a few of them that they're considering. These are all first and second round guys, right? Then you
Right.
look at your wide receiver core, and you got the 3 that look like they're like no brainers, and then a bunch of average after that or not top of the hill. So I think you have to prioritize. If you want to go get that gem, meaning a wide receiver, because it's a
Mhm.
deep offensive lineman draft. You would almost sometimes there's a guy you just can't pass on him.
Yeah.
We got to go get him. But in this offensive lineman draft, it appears that it's deep enough where you can say, okay, we're going to take care of that first priority. And remember, we have Houston's
pick.
pick later
Late
on in the
20s?
first round, late
Late 20s, I
20s.
believe. Yeah, yeah.
You could go get an offensive lineman because you got to remember appears the first 3 picks going to be quarterbacks right out the box. Then, we get in a wide receiver, and there's some other teams, tight end, I think somewhere, defensive end, So I think by the time you get to that pick in the 20s, you could get a good quality lineman to add, and he's still a first round pick. I remember when my brother was picked in 93, to the Saints, they had 2 first round picks. They picked Willie Roaf first, who eventually went to the
Oh,
Hall of Fame,
yeah.
Willie Roaf. Then
Yeah,
my
yeah.
brother a few picks later. So there's a way to do it, and then you can always look at moving up, moving back there, if you want to give away a second to somebody in the teens, then they get your 20 something and they also get one of your second round picks. There's ways to finagle. Like if it's a guy you really want, well, we'll deal a little bit that way too. So we're going to see, if is Monty a wheel and deal guy or he's a sit and play the cards he has. That's what I'm really anxious to see this year because this is year 2. So we'll see what they do with that pick. But I do think they could, with 2 picks in the first round, they could come away with 2 very valuable, spots being hit, meaning wide receiver and O lineman somewhere on that O line to team in with Parrish. Man, that's a great start if you ask me.
All right. So again, Bleav in Cardinals. He's at Smith. I'm Javon Adams. We appreciate you checking us out. Make sure you tell a friend and tell a friend. So we mentioned some of the needs. So interior offensive line, because if they did draft Jordan Morgan, they put him inside, and then Paris Johnson will likely move out to what I think is his position is left tackle. So we mentioned offensive line. We mentioned the wide receiver, but also edge rusher. So edge rusher, you watch a lot of college football. You watch that University of Washington. So Braylon Trice, edge rusher. One of the things mentioned in this report that I'm looking at could be an under the radar pick for the Cardinals. Montrose D-line, he could really be a powerful presence at Washington in 2023 as he was coming off the edge, not necessarily providing a ton of speed, but he could give them some type of punch there. hometown kid from Phoenix. Do you know a lot about Braylon Trice, or did you observe him, or what do you know? What do you think about maybe even getting an edge rusher somewhere in the first 2 or 3 rounds of the draft?
Yeah, I haven't done the deep dive, by position yet, and the name rings a bell, but I couldn't pretend like I know
Yeah.
exactly his skill set right now. Edge rusher to me, and once again, I think you have to prioritize. Edge rusher
Okay.
would be in that second tier of things that I want. Like I said,
Okay.
first thing I want to do, I got my franchise quarterback. I got to protect him, and I got to get him weapons to throw the ball to. To me, that's
Right.
1 and 2. Then you
Yeah.
start supplementing, and once again, I say this, Jay, free agency has to be a hit for you. You're not going to
Yeah.
cure all our illnesses in the draft, but I guarantee you there's a few experienced edge guys out there right now that if we open up the purse to, and it doesn't have to be tier 1, but somebody on that tier 2 growing toward being a tier 1 guy, we
Yeah.
could go out there and make it happen. So you got to spend the money though to do it. So, like I said, and then like I said, once you spend it on certain things, then you can prioritize your list, meaning what you're looking for in the draft. So, I mean, we're asking a lot of questions that we don't honestly know the answers to, or at least because we don't have all the information yet. What's been
Mm-hmm.
done in free agency before we get to the draft. But yeah, edge rusher. I mean, you look at the list of things we need, Jay. We need corner. We went down it. You need a cornerback. We got to secure the secondary. You got to get Buddha some help on the back end there. You definitely need some edge rushers. You need interior defensive tackles. We need offensive line. We need wide receiver. We also need running back. So what don't we need?
Yeah.
So the question is, they have to prioritize. And then if I was a GM in the draft, I would have my list of, obviously top guys, say 1 to 15 in every position, right? And that's
Right.
free agency. One board is filled with my free agent targets. The other is my draft. So as I start figuring this stuff out, I go down the line. This guy's rated higher than this guy here. If we could get him here in free agency, then I can maybe take my board over here with my draft board. I can slide and less priority there because I filled that. So there's all kind of methods. Like I said, we're working with the information we have right now, what the current roster is, what's out there in free agency, but who are the Cardinals targeting? We don't know all those things yet. We will once the period opens up, and then we'll have a much better thought process on, now that they've done this and this is, like for instance, Jay, I'll throw something out. What if something crazy happens during the combine right now where one of those disgruntled wide receivers, let's say Jefferson in Minnesota, right? Jefferson in Minnesota, they don't re-sign Kirk. He's pissed off. He wants to get out of there. Cardinals make a deal. They get him here. Now, all of a sudden, our priority might be, at the 4th pick, we don't necessarily need Harrison. So all these things have to take place first. And there's always a surprise or two. Like I said, we're working with the information we have now, but I'm excited because so many things can happen and there's so many possibilities out there. And we're going to see what the Cardinals are all about, this new regime, because this is year 2. Like I said, are they wheelers and dealers, or are they sit there just play the cards that are in their hand? We'll find out soon.
Yeah, we definitely will. And I can say this just from an enthusiasm or from a fan base perspective, I would imagine that if they do decide to, if things stay the same and they fill some of the other needs in free agency, but they do go and draft Marvin Harrison Jr., that will energize the fan base, I think, and you'll probably see that State Farm Stadium being much more full than it has been over the last handful of years, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we all know this. It's an offensive league, and we've been lacking for the last couple of years. Now it seems like we got some right people in the right places, and we start putting, like I said, obviously a better product out there offensively, especially. It will pull people back into those stands. And we were we were competitive. Now people want to see not competitive; they want to see actual winning.
Yeah,
that's the next step.
Because moral victories goes out the window in year 2, especially because of the way in which they approached their first year by really stripping it down, as you mentioned in the beginning of the show.
Well, even right now, Jay, you think about the Cardinals were 4-13 last year. you say that like as well as they played last year, you
It is
forget they
weird,
beat
right?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they beat Dallas, they
Yeah.
beat the Eagles, but
Yeah.
wow, they was still nobody can even think about it. It's like they were 4-13. So it's like eating something bad and it's got a nasty, funky taste, aftertaste in your mouth, and you just
Hmm.
can't get rid of it. Even though initially it was like, that's pretty good, and then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, is that aspartame or whatever the hell that is? Or damn, I just can't, know. But it lingers, and that's what the 4-13 did or does.
Yeah.
It lingers, even though
Yeah.
you and I, we were like, man, they were out there competing, which is a good thing. But fan wise, it's like 4-13, they suck, But no, I
Yeah.
think they're heading in the right direction, and we'll see what happens moving forward.
Yes, sir. Well, that is Ed Smith. I am Javon Adams. We do this thing during the season. We do it twice a week. It's the off season, so we'll bring you another one next week, and we'll take we'll go over that organization report card, and then we'll also maybe get into another position report too. Make sure to tell a friend about what we have going on here at Bleav in Cardinals, and also we are presented by Bet Online, as we always like to say around this time. You can